Okay, we are recording. Let me pull the screen share back up here. Okay, so hello everyone, good afternoon. Again, my name is Alex Graves with the Association of Independent California Colleges and Universities, better known by our acronym AICCU. I have a couple of colleagues with me from some of our member institutions who will be co-presenting with me, and I will let them introduce themselves momentarily. But I want to first thank all of you for joining, and more importantly, for all the work that you do to help students at your institutions and in your communities. We really appreciate everyone joining today to learn more about private nonprofit colleges in the state of California and the amazing opportunities that await students at these institutions. We're really looking forward to sharing a little bit about how we work to address sticker shock and what affordability means for students at our institutions. I think I speak for my fellow presenters when I say I hope for our hope for this session, excuse me, is that we can help address questions that you have and concerns that you have or that you hear from the students and families that you work with to help ensure that students are looking at all their options for colleges and not afraid to apply to one of the great private nonprofit colleges in the state simply because of the sticker price. So here is what we hope to cover today. I will talk a little bit about our sector, our institutions as a sector, and then we'll be followed by Emily Baker from the University of Redlands and Zolothea Smith from Dominican University of California, who I will invite to just say hello and introduce themselves now. And then we really want to dedicate a lot of time to answering questions that you all have. So Emily and Zolothea, if you just want to introduce yourselves really quickly, and then we'll continue on.
Hey, my name is Emily Baker. I'm the Senior Director of Student Financial and Military and Veteran Services for University of Redlands. And I look forward to talking with you all today. Thanks for joining us at the end of what I'm sure has been a busy day of Zoom presentations.
And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Zelota Smith. I am the Director of Financial Aid at Dominican University of California, and I look forward to speaking with you all today.
Great. And I just want to echo what they said. We really appreciate you all joining us at the end of what's been a really long, but I think powerful and inspiring day of programming and speakers and perspectives. So we will go ahead and dive in. So certainly, I think in the work that we do, we being myself, Zolothea, and Emily, there are definitely some common concerns and questions that we hear in discussions around private nonprofit colleges and universities, particularly as it relates to affordability. And certainly these are driven in part by sticker shock, by national reporting on student debt, and the fact that through 2019, the national debt for student loans, I think, was something like $1.5 billion. And so some of the concerns we have, or that we see, excuse me, are things around, that tuition is very high and that students there won't necessarily look like, the student or the prospective student, excuse me. We also, here I think pretty commonly that private colleges are primarily for those that are from more affluent families, and that the amount of debt one would have to take to attend is unsustainable or unmanageable for a student looking at colleges. And again, even sometimes we hear potentially that a college might be a good fit for a student. But again, really coming back to this question of, but is it worth it? Is the amount of debt or loans that I would have to take to potentially attend one of these colleges, is it worth it? And I think, we really want to acknowledge that there are these concerns out there and that there's angst and anxiety of figuring out not just how and where to attend college, but how to pay for college. And these are important considerations, certainly for families and students. And colleges, whether they're public or private, certainly are working to ensure that debt is minimized and that institutional resources are allocated to help make it affordable for students. And I say that, and then I want to say something that may seem to run counter to that, or even run counter maybe just to some perspectives for those of you joining us. But I think it's important to say, kind of as a point of framing for this conversation, and that is that debt in and of itself is not necessarily bad. And saying that, I also want to add that certainly, we should remain laser focused on debt. Who is taking on debt to go to college? Who is not taking on debt? How much are students taking? What outcomes are they seeing? Are they graduating? Are they getting jobs? Are they paying off those loans? Are they defaulting because they're not coming out with opportunities for meaningful employment? These are all certainly important things to consider, and we recognize that those fears and perspectives are out there. But when you look nationally, what you find is that since 2010, 2011, the total amount borrowed and the average borrowing per undergraduate student, at least, has declined. And that is nationally. And recognizing that California is a high aid state, I think those trends certainly hold for our state. So, I think the last thing I would say on this before moving on to our overview is, people generally agree that owning a home, right, is a good thing, that it's a good investment, even though it involves taking on what's probably, right, the most significant, largest financial investment in a person's lifetime. And that certainly involves debt, but we recognize that it is an investment, right, that is going to pay itself off over time for students. And I think a college degree is similar in many ways. So that's why I say what I do about that conversation. So diving in then a bit more. So AICCU, we are a collection of more than 80 private, independent, nonprofit, accredited universities throughout the state of California. Hopefully you all in your roles are familiar with at least one private nonprofit college somewhere in the state or in your region that you work in. But chances are, and the reason I put this up, chances are that whichever part of the state you are in, there are probably as many or more private nonprofit colleges and options as there are options for a UC or a CSU. And I mention this because we recognize, that for various reasons, sometimes students are going to want to attend college close to home or where they've grown up, either to live at home to save money, to be closer to family, to keep the job that they already have in high school, or if they're coming from a community college, et cetera. And, if when you all in your roles are talking with students and trying to help them make this important decision about college, I think if we start at the point of which colleges that offer four-year degrees can these students look at that will get them out with no debt, or that they don't need to take on debt, or that are the lowest tuition price, or to attend, we're immediately taking off the table, right, a significant number of options in any given region of the state. So a little more just about our institutions collectively. Almost 40% of our institutions are Hispanic serving institutions. Our student to faculty ratio is 11-to-1. So if you have a carton of a dozen eggs, if one of those eggs is a faculty member and the other 11 are students, that basically is a simple visual of what our student to faculty ratio at our institutions look like. So it's very intimate academic environments, direct access to professors, et cetera. And certainly with over 80 institutions around the state, there's a very diverse set of institutions with very unique offerings and opportunities for students, right? We have institutions physically located as far north as Redding, as far south as San Diego. We have large research institutions that I think everyone is aware of, like Stanford and USC. We have a number of liberal arts colleges, such as those listed, and a number of others. We have faith-based institutions, such as California Baptist University in Riverside, Fresno Pacific University, and others. We have 3 all women's colleges in Scripps College, Mills College, and Mount St. Mary's University, and also the only HBCU in the state of California is one of our member institutions, is a private nonprofit university. Our enrollment, collectively we enroll just a touch under 200,000 undergraduate students, overwhelming majority of which are California residents, including nearly 30,000 Cal Grant recipients and over 57,000 Pell recipients, as well as several thousand community college transfer students that enroll annually. And certainly you see this pie chart here breaking down the demographics of our undergraduate enrollment, and that will look a little different from institution to institution, but this is, I think, a pretty accurate snapshot of what you'll see, generally speaking, at our institutions. Moving on then to probably what you're most interested in this part of the presentation around affordability and debt. So the average listed tuition and fees for our institutions in 2018-19 was over $36,000. 70% of students receive institutional aid and for our low-income Cal Grant recipient students, the average institutional grant aid provided annually to a Cal Grant recipient is that $22,688. So that is grant aid, meaning it is money that is not needed to be paid back. It is not a loan, it is gifted with no repayment to students. And I think we're really proud also of the fact that our four-year graduation rate for our Cal Grant recipients is over 64%. And then over here in these bar charts, what you'll see are federal loan default rates for our sector compared to the other four-year degree granting sectors in the state, as well as this median federal loan debt figure. So I hope that gives just a quick overview as a sector as to some of the broad trends and brushstrokes around affordability and enrollment and what our student population looks like. I'm really excited to have Zolothea and Emily share an institutional perspective and really get more in the weeds on some of this. And the last thing I'd like to leave you with is just a resource, or I hope it's a resource for all of you. Excuse me. Every year, AICCU puts out our college guide. This has resources to help counselors, to help students, to help families explore their options offered by California's private nonprofit colleges and universities in the state. This link here will get you to that. I'll also drop it into the chat. But what it will give you is a resource that will give you a quick snapshot of any of our member institutions, as well as contact information for their admissions office. For many of our institutions, it'll also have contact information for their financial aid office, and it'll give you information on the top degree programs offered, where they have satellite campuses, the cost, as well as information around financial aid. So again, I will drop the link to this in the chat. Really encourage all of you to bookmark it and look through it and look to it as a resource as you help students and families explore options, public and private, for college. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Emily Baker.
Thank you, Alex. So before I start talking a little bit more about University of Redlands, we wanted to just share a little bit more of the process piece of this, and that is applying for financial aid. And recognizing that you probably have either are well familiar with this or have already sat through a session on this today, we just wanted to point out some key differences that could potentially come up when thinking about a private institution as opposed to a state or public institution. So of course, the first and sort of foremost way a student can apply for financial aid is through the Fafsa. And so the free application for federal student aid. I'm sure you probably all know that that is available at fafsa.gov or through the Department of Education's FSA mobile app. It's pretty user-friendly. Most students now say it takes them 30 to 40 minutes to do it, at least maybe in time two. Time one might be a little bit longer, but is not too bad. They do require tax information from the 2 years prior, which you're probably familiar with as counselors at this point. And it became available on October 1st. So that's great. It is already available. One important point to press, which I think any sort of financial aid person, when they get the opportunity to talk to people, has to remind you that March 2nd is a very important deadline, particularly here in the state of California for the Cal Grant. And so reminding as many people as we can to keep that March 2nd deadline in mind. When I'm talking with my students, I also want to remind you that they can do it earlier, and that the sooner they do their FAFSA and get it over to schools, the better, because then we'll be able to provide them their financial aid information sooner. Another piece that I want to talk about that takes the place of the FAFSA for some of our students here in California is the DREAM application. And so for many schools, particularly like University of Redlands, is that we take the DREAM application and process it just as we would a FAFSA, and award students financial aid. Sort of, it's all the same information, all the same deadlines, just that they would file it through the California Student Aid Commission through the DREAM app site, as opposed to through the federal site. And I'll talk a little bit more about how Redlands manages the DREAM application in just a minute. Redlands is not a CSS Profile school, but many of our schools in our sector are. And so the CSS Profile is an additional financial aid application that many schools will require the student to fill out in order to get them the most financial aid possible. It is, again, available online, follows sort of the same income and timeline information as the FAFSA, but asks a bit more in-depth questions to try and get a better understanding of that student and family's ability to contribute. And then the last one is just that each school is a little bit different and may require a different set of applications and may have different deadlines. And so we always recommend that you check with your financial aid office, keep a close eye on important dates, and help your students submit as much as they can prior to the deadlines. We're all working with students, particularly in a year like this, and best laid plans don't always work, but the more we can remind them of those deadlines, the better. All right, perfect. So again, I'm from University of Redlands. We are, you can see here our beautiful campus that we are all missing here very, very desperately. As I put these pictures together, I was like, oh gosh, it's time to get back to that campus, but we're not quite there yet. Looking forward to it in the spring. And of course, our lovely mascot, Addie, there in the middle. All right, so just some things about Redlands before we talk about financial aid. So our main campus is in Redlands. For those of you that don't know where Redlands are, we are about halfway between Palm Springs and Los Angeles, so not to be confused with Redding up north, which happens all the time. So just right down here, sort of in that greater Los Angeles area. In addition to our main campus, we also have 7 additional campus locations from as far south as San Diego up to Marin County. And across all those locations, we have 4 different schools. So we have our College of Arts and Sciences, which is your traditional sort of undergraduate population that many of you may be working with those types of students. We also have a School of Business, a School of Education, and a Graduate School of Theology. Across those schools, we have programs ranging from certificate programs, like perhaps an HR certificate or something in information technology, all the way through a doctoral degree. So a lot of different areas of study. In our undergraduate programs, we have 40 different pathways to degree. And so there's a lot of variety there. We also have the opportunities for many students to double major or have a major and a minor. One particularly unique thing about University of Redlands is that we have our Johnston program where the students are actually able to develop their own major. So they have a special application to be admitted into our Johnston program. They develop a contract with an advisory board as they declare their major, and then they can combine any areas that we offer from our graduate information systems, geographic information systems, through our School of Music, School of Education, to really create just the pathway of study that they are looking for. Our undergraduates are primarily residential, and so we have over 70% of our students that live on campus in a normal year. Obviously, we're not in a normal year, but we are a residential community, and most of our students stay on campus for all 4 years. We have approximately 5,000 students across all the programs I just talked to you about. About 3,200 are undergraduates. And then across all of our schools, our 6-year graduation rate is at 76%. But we'll talk a little bit more about some special programming we do for our undergraduates in just a minute. So as we think about who are our Bulldog students, and one of the sort of common comments we heard from Alex early on is that students at a private school or students at Redlands are not going to look like me. And so what we find is that students at Redlands look just like students at every other institution. We have a very diverse class. This year, we were a little bit more actually California students than we have been in the past, which makes sense. So our fall 2020 entering class was at 77% in state. We had over 60% of our students were underrepresented, 46%, so almost 50% of our incoming class were actually first generation students this year. So that was very exciting for us. We have 44% Cal Grant and then around 35% Pell Grant recipients. So you see there's a lot of diversity across our incoming class, and you see that across all of our schools in different ways a little bit. You know, each class looks a little bit different as trends shift and as the state looks a little bit different. But I think everyone can find their niche at Redlands. So the point we're all here to talk about, right, is your financial aid programs. And so like many other schools, Redlands has a number of different ways in which we assist students. So we have our merit scholarships. So those come in a number of different forms, but they are awarded at point of admission. One great part about this is students don't have to apply for it. They just need to apply for admission, and we're going to consider them for a merit-based scholarship. So every student who applies is considered. We also have talent-based scholarships. Those take a little bit of extra. So things like music, creative writing, or theater. Students are going to have to submit either an additional application or school music. We do auditions. And so some additional considerations there, and those are all done through the Common App. Then we also have need-based awards. And so for University of Redlands, this is where the Fafsa or DREAM application comes in. Any student who is admitted and files their Fafsa, we are going to review them for our need-based university grant. And we meet as much of that family's financial need as we possibly can. And what a need-based grant looks like is just in the form of a university grant. It doesn't have to be repaid and is renewable for all 4 years. Over 90% of all of our students receive financial aid. This particular incoming class that we just talked about, it was actually 97% of them were receiving some type of financial aid grant from the university. And so we're seeing, you know, the majority of our students utilizing some type of financial aid program. Our average financial aid package for that class that we just talked about, and so from sort of our most affluent students through our independent or zero EFC students, was $44,600. And then over 4 years, our students' average federal loan debt is at $23,200, pretty reasonable. But I think one of the things we're most proud of is our federal cohort default rate, which is at 1.9%. And so we work very closely with our students as they navigate their borrowing process at Redlands, but also their repayment process to ensure they are equipped with what they need to feel not only comfortable with what they're borrowing, but also what it means after graduation and what's available to them. And so that 1.9% is something that we feel very good about. Probably, oh, sorry, let me go back, Alex. The two most exciting programs that I want to talk about with University of Redlands is our Cal Grant Guarantee and our 4-year promise. And I like to talk about them together because they really make a Redlands education affordable for a number of our students. So our Cal Grant Guarantee is that any student who is eligible for the state's Cal Grant A and has above a 3.5 GPA is guaranteed that their full tuition will be covered by grants and scholarships. So for each student, this may look a little bit different, but for one student, it might be, you know, their Pell Grant and their Cal Grant and then some need-based university grant. For another student, it may be their Achievement Award and their Cal Grant and some university grant. But we ensure that that student's tuition is completely covered by grant funding. We put this program into place about 5 years ago because we wanted to ensure that students felt like Redlands was an option and that they could sort of remove a piece of that cost barrier. And so in making us more competitive with some of our local Cal States and UCs. And as you can imagine, we saw our number of Cal Grant students increase dramatically after we put that in place because it really did make us more affordable long-term. The second thing that we did and formalized about 5 years ago was our 4-year promise. And the 4-year promise is our guarantee to our students that they will graduate in 4 years. And I speak about this with our Cal Grant guarantee because, as I'm sure you all know, the Cal Grant is only available to students for 4 years. And so in partnering those two, we are sharing with our students that not only are we going to guarantee that your tuition is covered, but we're going to ensure you get out of here in time, and so that you're not running out of financial aid eligibility at the end of your program. And so what sort of the formalities of the 4-year promise is that as long as students enroll full time, meet with their advisor, declare their major, and pass their classes, that we're going to ensure as an institution that we don't get in their way. And I think that's one of the benefits of a private school is that we are small. We have about a 12-to-1 faculty to staff and student ratio. And so we can build additional sections and work with students on independent studies and ensure that they are able to graduate because we're a small school. And so we have some of that ability that a larger institution might not have access to. Go to the next one. Thank you. So since we're talking about affordability, we wanted to share with you some sample financial aid award letters. And so before we get into the nitty-gritty of this very fine print, so I apologize for all of you who've been staring at small screens all day, and then I give you very small print. But that a net price calculator is a tool for you and all of your students to use for any school that receives federal funding. And so I would highly recommend that you sort of put that in your back pocket of things you can help your student with. At Redlands, it's just that link you see at the bottom of the page, but all schools publish them and they may look a little bit different in format or style, but the information is the same, and that we're providing a sample cost and financial aid award to a student based on a set of information they input. And they can do this when they're a freshman, they can do this when they're a sophomore, they can do it as they're applying through their senior year and haven't received their financial aid award yet. So what you see on the left-hand side is just a sort of a very generic sample size family of 4 with a family income of about $50,000, an unweighted GPA of a 3.85, and that they chose to not submit test scores. So University of Redlands is a test optional institution. And so the student is not required to submit test scores. They can if they want to, but they certainly don't have to. So then what you can see is our costs. And this is where the sticker shock comes in, right? Like that top line cost of $73,000 still scares me every time I look at it. But the reality is that's not what our students are paying. And that's what makes us affordable and reasonable for a number of families. So you can see those estimated costs. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to, and I think is important as we're talking about students, is the difference between direct costs and indirect costs. So direct costs being what is the institution actually going to bill you? So tuition and fees, and then room and meal plan if the student is residing on campus. And then indirect costs, so things like personal expenses, transportation, books and supplies. And as we all know, and anyone who's ever worked with students, is that some students' indirect costs are far more expensive than other students' indirect costs. And so they do vary a lot student by student. So then the next thing I want to draw your attention to on the left-hand side is just the gift aid for this student. And so this is a student who would qualify for a Cal Grant guarantee. So their total gift aid is $53,716. Then you see that we're going to offer them federal work study or institutional work study. We're going to offer them their federal loan eligibility, and then we're going to supplement it with what we call a Redlands loan of $1,500, which is a subsidized loan. And so that family's out-of-pocket cost for the year in order for that student to live on campus is going to come out at just under $5,000 for the year. Similarly, on the right-hand side, you have a same type of student with a different family's financial situation. So family size of 4, family income of about $125,000, an unweighted GPA of 3.85 and no tests. So same costs, but this student is going to get a combination of need and merit-based awards of about $36,000. And it's all going to come from University of Redlands because they don't qualify for any state or federal financial aid. They're going to also receive some self-help in the form of work study and loans. And so that family's out-of-pocket cost is going to be just over $22,000 a year, including the cost for the student to live on campus. And so what we find is that this becomes, for both of these examples, we can become much more sort of competitive or comparable to many of the state institutions for those families that aren't qualifying for additional state or federal aid. All right. So I think I hope that we've sort of addressed some of the comments and concerns that Alex spoke to earlier. But a couple additional ones that I wanted to speak to is that I hear from students and families often that I won't qualify for financial aid because, and it's usually one of two reasons. Either my grades aren't good enough or my family makes too much money. And so in the instance where a student is saying, my grades aren't good enough, what I want to assure them is if you've been admitted, if you're admissible to University of Redlands, we're going to consider you for that need-based financial aid. So let's talk about whether or not you want to come and whether we're a good fit. And then the second one is my parents make too much money. And that's sort of example number 2 that we talked about in the example of financial aid award letters, where you're a student who maybe you have an older brother or sister, and so you know your family doesn't qualify for Cal Grant or Pell Grant, and so you have sort of written off receiving any financial aid. And so we really try to empower that family to take advantage of filing the Fafsa or any other financial aid application, because most private schools do recognize that our costs are high. And so while the family may not have need at a less expensive institution, they absolutely do have need at our institutions. And so we're going to respond to that appropriately to make us more affordable for them. The second thing I hear a lot is I will lose my financial aid after the first year. And so this concern of you're going to give me this great financial aid award, and then you're going to pull it out from under me and I'm going to be in trouble. And so institutions, particularly in AICCU, we're not doing that. At University of Redlands, you're going to receive the same financial aid award year over year, assuming the family's financial situation stays similar. So I usually share, if you win the lottery, you're not going to receive the same financial aid, but as long as your life kind of continues the way it has been, you're going to receive that same financial aid award year after year. And so that shouldn't be a deterrent to coming. And then the last is, I know I can't afford it, and so I don't want to waste my time and or get my hopes up. And so I think until a student or family has really seen that financial aid award, they don't know they can't afford it, because a lot of people are surprised by how much financial aid there is available and what can be possible. And so I really just recommend that if a student is interested and thinks it might be a good fit, or they like the programs that are offered, or they want those small class sizes, it is worth it to take that little bit of a risk. Take the step, file the FAFSA or the DREAM application and see, or do the net price calculator and get an idea. The other piece I would just add is that most of our institutions offer fee waivers for the common application or whatever application we do. So if there's that concern of I don't want to spend that extra money because I know it's not going to work, ask for a fee waiver, because most of us will grant that to you, because we want you to take the risk of applying to our schools. And so I think hopefully with that and the demonstration of the financial aid programs sort of just gives you some things to think about, because our goal is that a student is going through their college hunt and picking the school that is the right fit, that has the right community and the right geographic area and is close to home or not close to home, and then working with people like us to figure out how the financial side of it is going to fit. And we're not going to guarantee that for 100% of students it's going to be perfect, but I think it works well for a lot more students than they actually expect it to. And so I think that's what we're hoping to slowly shift the curve of students that are willing to kind of take that step and see if it's a fit for them. And this is my contact information here, so please feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions generally or about University of Redlands.
Great, thank you so much, Emily. Next, we'll turn to Zolothea Smith. And as we do that, if folks have questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. And as soon as we get through the slide deck here, we'll be happy to answer all your questions.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Zolothea Smith. I'm the Director of Financial Aid at Dominican University of California. I just want, Emily covered a lot of the basics, but I just want to mention about the Css Profile. It is not a free application like the FAFSA. There is a fee associated with it. It's $25 for the first school and then $16 for each additional school. Dominican does not use the CSS profile, so that is one thing that we don't use. And just to reiterate, we are Dominican University of California. There is another Dominican University in Chicago, which we often get confused with. We get their FAFSAs and they get our FAFSAs. So that happens a lot within our schools. Go ahead, Alex, there you go. Okay, so a little bit about Dominican. We have over 60 programs and majors at our school. We're located in Marin County in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we're literally just across the Golden Gate Bridge. Lovely weather out here. A couple of things that we offer is something called personalized integrative coaching. What that is, you have once you enroll, and we have about 2,000 students, so we're a very, very small private school. Your integrative coach works with the student throughout their entire time there. So they're assigned that integrative coach. They help them with their digital portfolio. They make sure, they're enrolled in the correct courses, and basically they kind of help you and guide you through the process. We are also part of the California Civics Fellows Program. This is a program that just started, I believe, this year. We're one of, I believe, 2 or 3 private schools that have it. I know there's a few state schools and I think 1 or 2 UCs that also has that program. But with the California Civics program, basically it's a service program where the student is doing like community service and helping to get their degree. Then we have the digital portfolio. What that is basically it's kind of a portfolio that you work with your integrative coach to put together. Like Redlands, we have small class sizes. I believe our ratio is 12:1. And also about 99% of our students receive some type of financial aid. Now, it could be institutional, it could be a combination of institutional, state, and federal, but 99% of our students do get some type of financial aid. And speaking of financial aid, another thing we started this last year is what's called a personalized financial aid video. So once you are admitted and once we've processed your award letter, then each student receives a personalized financial aid video that is sent directly to them. And it's a link, the students can share it, they can email it to people, they can put it on their GoFundMe page or what have you. But basically what that video does is it tells them, welcome to Dominican. It gives them a breakdown of their financial aid award. It lets them know what their cost is after all financial aid has been applied. And it talks a little bit more about the school and then provides next steps. Okay, and yeah, there we go. Okay. Some things about some of our programs. Our nursing program is one of the most sought of in the Bay Area. We always have a waiting list. The nursing program is one of the programs that does require our students to take the SAT ACT test. We did go test optional this year, but because our nursing program is so competitive, the nursing students are required to take that test. Also, we are known for social mobility for our students. So we do admit a high percentage of low income. Most of our population is Latinx students. And with those students, we are known for getting those students from one bracket to another. And then our 4-year graduation rate is 66%. And we are noted as a college of distinction for business and education in both the US News and World Report for this last year. More information about our integrative coaching. The students work one-on-one with their coach and mentors. Again, they help them to, develop their digital portfolio. It looks good with a resume. And also they help them with the service work for internship and community engagement. Okay, next slide, Alex. Okay, a little bit more about the personalized financial aid video. Again, it's received after the student is admitted and it's personalized specifically to the student. Again, it breaks down the financial aid award. So basically it tells them, this is your gift aid. These are your federal loan options. If you are a dependent student, it will tell you, okay, you have the option for a parent loan or you can make payments. And then it lets you know the difference between the direct cost and the indirect cost. And Emily touched on that, and we get that question too. You know, they look at the price of, we're at about almost 70,000 for our cost of attendance, and that's the sticker shock where students are, oh my goodness. But again, you have your direct costs that you will pay to the school, and you have your indirect costs, which are figured into your cost of attendance. And then also, if we have to do any revisions, say a student's FAFSA is selected for the verification process, because for our new students, we send out those award letters prior to completing verification, and we do let them know that it is an estimated award letter. So if we have to do verification, or say a student gets a private scholarship or something like that, and we have to revise an award, then the student will receive a new financial aid video with the updated award information on there. Next slide. Again, some common misconceptions. Private college is too expensive. Again, it is affordable through financial aid, whether it's institutional, state, or federal. One of the advantages of attending a independent college is that we kind of have a little bit more leeway with our institutional aid versus your state and UC schools. Also, the time spent in school, you're going to spend about 4 years. We can pretty much get you out in 4 years, as long as, students, pass their classes and go through school in a timely manner. And then again, you're paying for that personalized attention. With an independent school, of course, you're going to have a smaller population. As I stated before, we have about 2,000 students. So we are, again, very, very small. I personally know a lot of students by name, see them around campus, those that are there. Again, this is a different year, but again, your professors know you by name. Your integrative coach knows you by name. Everyone just knows you by name. So that's one of the definitely advantages to going to an independent college. And again, it's worth the investment because of the smaller class sizes, personalized attention. Again, like I said, they know you by name, and then community engagement. Especially here in the Bay Area, we have definitely a lot of opportunities for social justice and social change, especially being so close to San Francisco. A lot of our students do volunteer at maybe food pantries, or they go into the city and volunteer for organizations and things like that. Next slide. Okay, so some sample award letters. The first one on the left is for a low-income student with a median GPA, so a 3.2 or 3.5. We have our Dean's Award. That's the full Pell Grant, Cal Grant, and then we're going to give you the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan for a dependent student. And then for a middle income student with a high GPA, they would get our top tier scholarship, which is the trustee scholarship, and it's $25,000. And then you have the subsidized loan and the unsubsidized loan. And again, as Emily mentioned, if situations are different from year to year, because of course the FAFSA is looking at information from 2 years ago, please have the students come to the financial aid office and talk to us. A lot of times the student can file an appeal. And we can, take a look at your award and see, but the merit-based aid, so like the deans, the trustee, we also have a president's and one more scholarship. Those are determined on the admission side. So they're determined through GPA, test scores, if the student took the test scores, and then also potentially the essay that the student wrote. Okay. And then again, there's my contact information down there. Please, again, feel free to reach out if you have any general questions about financial aid, or if you anything you want to know, I will be more than happy to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone again for joining. And I did see a few questions coming into the chat as we were all sharing some information with you. So I will scroll up and work through those. And again, happy to take other questions as they come in. So I did see a question come in. I believe, Emily, it was for you. Do students need to maintain a 3.5 GPA throughout their time at Redlands in order to remain eligible for the Cal Grant guarantee?
So the answer is no. That's just at the point of their enrollment. So their high school GPA has to be that 3.5 or above. During their time at Redlands, they just need to maintain satisfactory academic progress. And so that's full-time enrollment with a minimum of a 2.0 GPA with us.
Great. And I guess since we're on that question, Zolothea, for you, are there kind of similar question to you with some of the institutional aid provided? Are there kind of specific GPA requirements, for students, or is it also satisfactory academic progress?
Yes, for the merit-based aid, it's just that initial GPA and then maintaining the satisfactory academic progress.
Great. And then I see a question in here, Zolothea, that came in for you, asking if you could talk a little more about the personalized video you send out. Is it filmed with your staff? Does it utilize a third-party vendor for the content? I guess a little more about kind of like what the content of the video is.
We use a third-party vendor. However, we did have to submit photos and videos to the third-party vendor. And so they kind of put it all together. And then again, it's personalized. So whatever that specific student's award is, it goes specifically for that student. So like at the beginning of the video, it says welcome and then the student's name. And then it kind of goes through, this is your award, this is what you're eligible for, this is what the cost breakdown looks like. And then in the background, there's pictures and videos of students, of classrooms, of some faculty and staff member, just beautiful pictures of the campus. And then there's at the end, there's a whole next steps, and you can either submit your deposit, you can talk to your admissions counselor if you need to, or go ahead and just enroll in school. So yes, we do use a third-party vendor for that service.
Great. And then a related question around what system you use for these for the personal videos.
As far as system, it's a leveraging company that we use. The name of the company is RNL, but they're the ones that kind of helped us put it together. We got a lot of good feedback from the video last year. We had quite a few students and families watched it, and they thought it was pretty cool because they had never seen anything like that. And as I mentioned before, it's a shareable link. So, you can send it to your rich aunt or uncle who wants to write you a check to go to school, and done and done.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's see. So there's a question here. Does everyone do a plus pre-screen on dependent students prior to packaging?
I don't know that I can speak for everyone, but University of Redlands does not do a plus pre-screen. We also only package with the sort of the 35 and 2, so the standard subsidized or unsubsidized, depending on a student's eligibility loan levels. Then if the student's family applies for a Parent Plus loan and they're approved, we would at that point add it to their award, but we don't add it until after the student has, or the parent has actually applied for the loan. And then if the parent is denied at that point, we would offer the additional unsubsidized direct loan. But we don't do anything with the plus loans until the family indicates that they're interested in using that option.
And ditto what Emily said. We do not do that either, but I will mention for parents who don't have status or are undocumented, we do have a form that we would have the parent fill out, so that way they wouldn't have to go through the process of applying for the Parent Plus loan, and the student would automatically receive that additional unsubsidized funding because the parent can't apply for the Parent Plus loan.
Great. Let's see. And then there's another question. It just says additional aid for valedictorians ? So this is probably a question around high academic achieving or merit aid, I guess.
We don't specifically have an award for valedictorians, but we do have merit-based scholarships that range from $10,000 up to $32,000 a year. And so I imagine that a valedictorian would have a sort of very high academic profile. And so they would probably receive one of the higher merit scholarships that we would offer.
And again, same, but our merit awards go from 12 to 25. And again, depending on where they fall at the point of admission on the GPA scale. Great.
And as we wait to see if any other questions come in, I'll pose one question for both of you. I think one of you mentioned, right, that the Cal Grant Award is good for 4 years. I think, Emily, you mentioned a 4-year guarantee. And And I guess the question I would pose for you all is, what does your institution and financial aid office do for students who, for whatever reason, something happens with life, need a little bit longer to 4 years, or then 4 years, excuse me, to graduate? Is there still aid available to them? Or what does that look like?
There is aid available. There is aid available to those students. So usually at that point, we are getting the integrative coach involved and kind of help the student and walk them through the process to let them know of their funding options, especially with a Cal Grant expiring. But we always tell students, come talk to us, please, so that way we can make those decisions together.
And it's my turn to say ditto. It's a very similar answer from us, except for the fact that we have a satisfactory academic progress appeal that at that point, the student would need to fill out, and that includes a letter of support from their academic advisor. And so we're pulling sort of the academic advisor or the dean's office in to say, all right, we're here. How did we get here? And how do we make sure you have what you need in order to graduate? But we do continue to award institutional aid, and then of course, any outside funding that is still available beyond those points. And depending on the student's financial need, oftentimes we will be able to make up some of the difference between losses in funding that runs out in order to help that student kind of finish up with us.
Great. And I realize I've been focusing on the chat, but given we are on Zoom, I think many of you have the ability, if you want, to unmute yourself and ask a question. So let me just pause briefly to see if there are any of you who have a question you'd like to pose verbally rather than in writing. Not seeing any. Unless another question pops up here, I guess I will just pose one more for Emily and Zolothea before we conclude. Oh, I see. Sorry, I see. George, I just said if anyone had another question they wanted to ask verbally rather than in writing, I was inviting them to unmute themselves and do so. So for Emily and Zolothea, I guess, is there, I guess, kind of in close, as we're kind of wrapping up, is there one, either program or initiative at your institution or you think really just stellar opportunity that your institution offers that you think best exemplifies the benefits of considering an independent nonprofit college such as yours?
Again, I will definitely iterate our nursing program. We're one of the few direct into nursing programs in the Bay Area. So that, like I said before, we always have a wait list of students who want to get in. So definitely. And then, yeah, like I said, we also are an institution that is known for social mobility to get students into that next or a higher tax bracket.
So I think for University of Redlands, our approach is personalized, but also really helping a student identify and utilize the pathways to their degree. And so for some students, that means entering as a first year and staying with us for 4 years, and then maybe staying on for an MBA that they can complete in 12 months. Or someone who knows they want to be a teacher can combine their undergraduate education and then just have 6 months of student teaching at the end and be, fully credentialed to teach with their undergraduate degree. Or maybe they take it another semester and actually leave with their MALT program. And I talked a little bit about Johnston. And so just the idea of we have developed a number of pathways that allows a student to enter and then really have a successful experience, either leaving with an undergraduate degree or a master's, or even staying with us through their doctoral program. Or helping a student who started at a community college and saying like, okay, what does it look like now to finish out your 4-year degree? And so working both through the dean's office, the academic offices, and then offices like mine from the financial side to say, we want this to fit for you, and everyone's experience is going to look just a little bit different. And then the last sort of fun tidbit I would say from a financial perspective is I think we have a unique program in that our students who study abroad, which is really important to us, and one of the more painful things that we're losing out on this year, is that if a student chooses to study abroad, they're going to pay the exact same tuition, room, and meal plan costs as they would on campus, and keep receiving all the same financial aid. So the only change in expense to the family is the travel costs to get them wherever they're going, and then whatever spending money the student wants while they're abroad. And so it really just opens up the opportunity for so many more of our students to get that study abroad experience, because it removes that concern of that financial piece. And so I think that's a really special experience that a good number of our students take advantage of. It's usually between 40 and 50% of our class take advantage of that study abroad experience.
Great. Well, thank you both. And not seeing any more questions, and that we are close to the 5 o'clock hour. I want to wrap up by just reiterating what I said at the outset, and that we really want to thank everyone for joining today, but more importantly, want to thank all of you for the work you do at your institution and your community with students and families. It's really important work, and we know that this year has certainly been challenging in a number of ways for any aspect and many aspects of the work that you all do. But we really appreciate you all participating. I put my contact information in the chat. We also put a link to the college guide in the chat. Please feel free to look through that. Please feel free to reach out to any of us if you are trying to get more information or need to follow up, or just want to get some questions answered. Be happy to try and either answer those questions or connect you with someone who can. So thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your evening.